Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is D back again with MKD58 Media, and I have another movie review for you. And this time I'm going to be talking about 2016's Don't Breathe. All right, so this is a movie that I've actually owned the DVD for a good while and still hadn't gave the movie a watch up until a few nights ago. So finally gave it a watch. These are some of my thoughts. So first off, let me just start off with the general plot of the movie. A group of thieves, 3 thieves to be exact, 1 girl and 2 dudes. One of the dudes is actually in a relationship with the girl. If I remember correctly, the girl's name is Rocky, and the other guy is kind of in the friend zone with the girl, but he's kind of more of the I guess kinder hearted gentleman, if you will, of the 2 guys, and he just kind of, I guess, for the most part, wants what's best for Rocky and all that type of stuff. And anyway, but they're all, the 3 of them, they're a group of thieves, and they decide to rob a blind man who happens to be sitting on a large chunk of money. And they get more than they bargained for when they try to invade this man's home and take his property. He's a little bit harder to handle than the average senior citizen. So, and that's kind of the general plot of where we are with the movie. So, what I thought about the movie: positives. The dark, bleak atmosphere fit very well for this film. It has a very just dark atmosphere about it. In terms of how the movie looks, this movie, if I remember correctly, is set in Detroit, and the movie looks a lot to me like the movie 8 Mile from way back in the day at this point. But that movie, of course, was centered around and set in the Detroit area, and that movie had a very similar dark, bleak look to everything. Just a very almost hopeless, for lack of a better word, just hopeless kind of energy about the film. And this movie, Don't Breathe, has that same look to it, and it fits very well with the film. It's to me, very cinematic and atmospheric, and just, like I said, dark and bleak, and it fits for this horror type energy. So that's a positive. So the story is, in my opinion, this aspect I'm about to talk about of the story is a positive. The story is like an exercise in shades of gray, because really overall there aren't any, well, you could argue there's a couple, but for the most part there aren't any truly through and through good characters, or I should say good guys, in this film. Like, everybody that you're generally focused on in this movie has something illegal going on with them. They're victimizing, or at least attempting to victimize, somebody else in one form or another. These thieves are trying to, and for all they know, this is just an innocent, old, and to top it off, blind man that's sitting on his own, some money that's rightfully his, and they're going in to try to take it from him, right? And then on the reverse side, this this old man, he's up to some, I don't want to give a lot away, I suppose, for those that still haven't seen this movie, but this old man, he's up to some diabolical things himself, so he's not a total victim either. I mean, in terms of, he's not a saint, they're not saints. And you could argue everybody, at least the main kind of characters, I feel like the female character, Rocky, she's kind of being held up as the main protagonist of this. Like, the energy of the movie kind of tells me that she's the one we're supposed to be rooting for. Like, if anybody's the protagonist or the good guy in this movie, it's supposed to be her. And to another extent, her friend, the guy friend, not the boyfriend, but the guy friend of hers or whatever, he's clearly supposed to be one of the good characters as well. But in terms of actual deeds, these aren't sinless people that we're dealing with on any sides in this movie. So, and to me, that brings an interesting dynamic, because then it's not just that traditional good guy versus bad guy type thing, which can just be, sometimes that can be played out. And, you know, really, I guess a lot of stuff can be played out at this point with movies. But I think the shades of gray aspect of this is a positive. All right, so any other good things I want to say about this? Well, of course, the acting performances are all pretty good across the board. The guy who plays I'll make sure to put up his name in the edit, but the guy that plays the old blind man does a great job, fantastic job. He's menacing but also believable as this old blind guy. He's probably the most in shape old blind dude I've ever seen in my life, but he's still it's still a believable type kind of energy that's coming from him. So he does a great job with his acting performance, and all of the other characters really do a good job with what their role is asking them to do. So and what else? The movie's actually relatively short, if I remember correctly. It's in the, well, let me make sure here. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's in the 90-minute range, so it's a relatively short film, and which is good for me, especially with this type of, you know, what this movie is dealing with. A 90-minute runtime is probably perfect, because to be honest with you, with this film, there is a portion where in the latter parts of the movie, I'd say maybe the last 10 minutes or so, where it starts to kind of get that, it almost starts to overstay its welcome in a way. But everything that takes place in the home of the old man, during that initial kind of invasion, and then the tables get turned and all that type of stuff, all of that is well done, entertaining. I don't really have a lot of issues with what happens there, but there are a few points towards the end where it's kind of like, okay, this might be going on a little bit too long. And another negative that I also want to point out is that, and this is going to be kind of spoilerish territory, so I'm warning you now, but the movie opens, the opening scene in the movie is an event that takes place basically later on in the movie. So the opening scene in the movie gives away something that happens later on in the film. Sometimes this can happen in films and it's not a big deal. I didn't like it ultimately with this movie, because it wasn't necessary to have this scene be your opening scene. Wasn't actually necessary, and it did, like I said, give something away that happens later on in the movie. But what I will say is it is a very striking, dynamic, dramatic, attention-grabbing visual for a movie opener. So from a stylistic perspective, I can understand why you would pick that for an opening scene, because it does kind of grab you, and it is very grim, very dark, and sets you up for the type of movie you're about to be in store for. So from a stylistic perspective, I understand that choice, but just in terms of its effect on story and things like that, I feel like they shouldn't have had that as the opening scene. So to me, that is a negative. What else do I got here for negatives? There's a lot of plot armor. I shouldn't say a lot, but there's a few occasions of plot armor stuff going on. Stuff with the old man's hearing. And some of this can be kind of given the benefit of the doubt, but there's moments with his hearing where he can hear very well, he can hear the faintest sound, and then other times it's like he can't hear somebody moving right next to him, and it feels like it's just a plot armor type situation. We need him to not actually be able to hear this in order for us to keep the story moving along. Now, you can actually explain that away by saying realistically, different circumstances, if there's another ambient sound in the room at the same time, it might affect his ability to hear something else. So you can explain away, realistically speaking, you can explain away why he would hear certain things at certain times, but not be able to hear other things at other times. You can kind of explain that away, so I can let that go, but it is a noticeable thing over the course of watching the movie. So that's one plot armor thing. Another plot armor thing is situations involving this dog he has. There's a lot of moments where the movie slows the dog down, basically, in order for characters to be able to get away or to get to a certain position to do something else that moves the story along and things like that. There's a lot of that, and to be honest, that's a very common thing I notice in movies where they have a dog chase somebody or some sort of dog attack, because realistically, a lot of, these animals would be way too fast, specifically the type of animals and the attitude of the animals that are in these movies. Realistically, they would be way too fast for some of these folks to just, trot away from these creatures and things like that. So there's things like that going on with the dog. I don't want to give a lot away, but then at the same time, I don't really care about spoiling certain things, because I've kind of made it clear there are spoilerous stuff in this review. But there's a moment later on in the movie where the dog is trying to get at the character Rocky, and she does something to him that is supposedly keep him from continuing it any further. Like he's kind of got a leash on him and is restricted from moving further toward her. And he's like right here biting at her. And and she's actually laying down. So realistically, they're probably like almost torso to torso in a way. And then it's like, if he really wanted to chomp down on her, he had a whole lot of real estate below the neck to bite her if he actually wanted to. But instead, for movie purposes, they just kept him doing this. He was just focused on this. And of course, she gets away because he just keeps doing this and he can't get her. But for some reason, he never figures out to go low and try to bite. So it's, and that's just clearly just something that the movie just allows to happen, so that she can actually end up getting away and not actually get destroyed by this dog or whatever. And so that's kind of plot armorish stuff that I'm talking about. That's very noticeable. But if you want to just kind of turn certain parts of your brain off and things like that when you're watching a film, you don't got to take it that seriously. It doesn't destroy the movie for you. At least it didn't destroy the movie for me. But it is goofy stuff that's noticeable. So that's some negative stuff. Some takeaways from this. My basic overall takeaway, as you know, I'm not doing number scores anymore. To me, this is a good entry into the horror genre that I would recommend to a fan of the genre. But it does have its kind of missteps, its goofy moments, and it's kind of some parts that might make you make you wonder a little bit. But overall, this is a recommendable horror film. I would definitely recommend this to somebody that's a fan of horror. And I also will put it like this, because this really kind of will explain a good general feeling of how I feel about this movie. The trailer delivered everything. What the trailer showed me, the movie delivered pretty much everything that the trailer would lead me to believe the movie would have. I'll put it like that. So there's no false advertisement or misleading going on here when it comes to the trailer, at least in my opinion. If you were intrigued by the trailer for this movie and thought, man, that looks like that could be interesting, I'm going to give it a watch, I don't think you will be disappointed by this movie, unless you just thought there was going to be some for some people, there's something in this movie that's considered a crazy plot twist. I forget that I found out about this before I ever saw the movie, long before I ever saw the movie. And so I forget that this was supposed to be a plot twist. So there is a crazy plot twist in this movie if you don't really know anything about this movie going into it. So I really should say that, because that's actually accurate. There's actually a very crazy plot twist in this movie if you don't know anything about the movie going in. I actually knew quite a bit about this movie before ever seeing it, so I wasn't surprised by the quote-unquote twist in this movie. So I will point that out. There is a worthy entry into the crazy plot twist in a horror movie category with this movie. So I guess I'll leave it there. This Don't Breathe 2016, I recommend it. It's a pretty good watch. Like I said, I'm not going to give it any type of number grade, but I do recommend it to fans of horror genre. In terms of other horror movies that I would put in its class, for some reason right now, It Follows rings heavy in my head in terms of something that I would compare to this. They don't really deal with the same necessarily, type of villain and kind of general themes, but in terms of level of horror movie, I think It Follows and Don't Breathe are on a kind of similar playing field in terms of level of horror movies. So I feel like if you liked It Follows, or at the very least you thought It Follows was a good little horror movie, I think you might be able to appreciate the quality and level of horror film that Don't Breathe is. And I know there's probably people that'll disagree with that whole comparison that I just did, but right now it feels right. So all right, that's it, you guys. As always, thank you for watching, and until the next time, I will catch you on the next go round.